Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Conquer with Chris. I'm your host, Chris Collier. And today we have a great guest. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I am excited to be here with you on Conquer with Chris and looking forward to our conversation.
Allie, we're getting to know each other. Tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I am a former environmental professional, former political candidate, currently just started a career as an author, got awards, so I'm technically an award-winning author, kind of fun. I am a certified facilitator, life coach, public speaker, and mom to two amazing kids who I love more than anything.
That's great. So before we dive into your story, you said something interesting. You're an award-winning author. So how do you get an award for being an author?
Well, the book actually got the award. I didn't. So I should say I'm an author of an award-winning book. I have received no personal awards for being an author. So I got awards for doing other things, but not for it's the book that got the award. Yeah.
Well, you wrote it, so
I did write it. Yeah. So, and I've submitted the book to 3 different award competitions. And the way it works is either you or somebody else, one other person submitted the book to one award, and you submit it and it's reviewed by an independent panel. And then you don't hear anything for months and months and months. And then you get an email notification that either says, thanks so much, you didn't win, or thanks so much, you got an award. And fortunately, I actually have won 2 awards for the 3 contests I submitted. So I figure that's a win.
Look at if all baseball players hit 2 out of every 3 times, it changed the game of baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So how do you go from all these other things to becoming an author?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a door closing and a window opening, right? It's the ebb and flow of life, the ups and the downs, and out of ashes springs the phoenix. And I had spent about 30 years working to build my career in the natural resources world, policy world. And the job I held was eliminated. So a little bit of a long story, and I won't get into it because it involves politics, but it was eliminated, and I took a few months off just to spend time with my kids and enjoy the summer. And then the pandemic hit, and there's a lot of social justice movements happening and awareness, and the inequities that our society faces really started to come into much more stark relief. And I ended up running for office against an incumbent. And although I was not elected, our campaign, made a really positive difference, which was really wondreful. On the personal side, though, while all that was happening, my mother had become very sick, and I ended up bringing her home to live with me instead of putting her in any sort of hospice situation. And she died before the campaign ended, which was really hard. Although I feel very blessed that we were able to have those last couple months of her life together. And I just didn't have it in me to keep going, really. And I ended up taking some time again. And I had started what were the bones of my book years ago, after my husband died about 10 years ago. And I'd started the bones of this as life advice for my kids. And I had kind of a low point, finding myself an empty nester and living alone after decades of always having someone else in the home with me, and pulled out these scraps of paper and my little jottings. And fast forward, I ended up putting it all together and writing it for my kids. But things evolved, and I received some feedback that I should make it more broadly available. And fast forward, and I have a book. So, and that's not to say poof, it just happens. I mean, I worked very hard for months to make that happen. But that's the nut of it. That's how you go from thinking you're going to spend the next 20 years working to, develop policy and manage natural resources programs to suddenly I'm a public speaker and an author. Poof,
Wow.
life
Well,
changes.
yeah, let's talk about this for a moment, because there's a couple things to unpack here. My father passed right about the mid to end of COVID.
Mm.
And I know a lot of people lost a lot during Corona. But, when someone that you're close to dies, a parent, a loved one, it makes an impact on your life. And so unpacking that's probably important so we can help the people when they deal with loss. What are some of the steps you found helpful in dealing with losing a person that's close to you?
Yeah. Grief is something that sadly we all face. Like every one of us. If you are young and haven't faced it yet, sadly it's inevitable. Death and taxes, they happen. And how people handle grief, I think, is very unique to that individual. So I'm not a big believer, Chris, in a one size fits all approach, because what works for one person is not going to work for another. For me personally, being able to bond more closely with my children and talk with them and share with them worked for me. Sometimes people need to speak with grief counselors. Sometimes people have friends. I think there needs to be some sort of outreach. I think that's important, however that looks for you, because if you don't reach out, that grief will fester and turning inwards. It'll eat you up inside and can spiral you down into a very negative and dark place. So regardless of how you do it, I think one advice that I would give, one way to deal with it would be make sure you're reaching out, make sure you're connecting. We're social creatures. People are social creatures, and we need those interpersonal connections. So I think that would be one way. And then the other thing that it sounds almost, it sounds almost cliche, but in truth, that person wouldn't want you, if they loved you and you love them, that person wouldn't want you to spiral down into a deep depression or give up on life. Life goes on. Life continues. And that person, if they loved you and cared about you, they're going to want the best for you. And they're going to want you to continue and move on and to thrive in your life, understanding that you'll be sad. But being able to thinking about that person's desire for what is for you. My mom, and I'm sure your dad, wanted you to live your best life, to live your dream life. And so recognizing that and being able to say, you know what, it's okay for me to move on because that's what this person would want, I think also is very helpful. And then the third and final thing that I would offer that I think is universal is it's going to take time. It's just going to take time. And, the old expression, time heals all wounds. I don't know if I believe that. I'm a little bit more of a, if you hammer the nail into the fence, you can pull it out, but that hole's going to be there type. So I think that sadness, that grief does stay within you, but it becomes smoother. It becomes more mellow and manageable. And that's it. It doesn't really go away. Not for people you're very close to, like a parent, or worse, a child, or a spouse. It stays with you forever, but it hurts less as you go on. And so I think that would be my guidance to other people, those three things, in whatever way that looks for you as a person.
I agree with that so much. I think that's right on point. But I would add, you need to find, as you reach out, you also need to reach in and find that voice of that person, right? That voice where they can speak to you, like their truths that they taught you or shared with you, especially as a spouse or a parent, truths they shared with you, things that you guys dealt with together. I think it's important.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
And sometimes writing those down help. Help in the sense of because then you find yourself like, I'll find myself quoting my dad, or I'll be doing exactly what he would do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, almost like his spirit is with me.
Yeah.
Not that I'm worshiping him.
No, but I know
Although,
what you mean, Chris, because I think for me, and maybe I said it poorly, that's part of that second step, what that person wanted for you, because you do need to hear them. And, as you know, my book is filled with quotes, and I talk about my mom, and I talk about things that she said to me. And one of her favorites was, you gotta keep on moving on. And she also said this, my grandmother used to say, this too shall pass. Right. And so understanding that there is an end in sight. And also, I would also add that for some people, that looking inward is also very spiritual, for whatever that means for, for you as a person, whether it's a more formal form of spirituality or a more informal form of spirituality. I think that is also a part of it, and opening yourself up to understanding, I guess, might be the right word.
well, I'm going to quote my grandma. My grandma said this: if you ain't learning, you're dying. And I think that's even in the process of someone leaving you and dying. I think it's important to remember that you need to learn from their life, because as they're not in this realm anymore, as they're not here, you've got to remember that they can still teach you. They'll still help you grow. And as you dealt with this, you were wrapping up a political campaign, and I guess you decide to end your campaign, or didn't win, or whatever. But then you transitioned. You said you took another break. I think that's wise, because you were in that environmental field for so long, and then that transitioned into running for office after a break. And people don't understand that making major changes like that, you need a break.
Yeah.
And then you ran for office, and then you also had your mother pass, and that was difficult to
And it
deal
was
with.
COVID, and my daughter was depressed, and there was all kinds of things going on during that time for a lot
Right,
of people. It
right. But
was a tough time.
so then you said, "Oh, I'm gonna transition again," and you took a break to make that transition smoother. I want you to touch on the importance of breaks, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we see, like, people write their life story and they don't see the breaks in the chapters, right? No, people don't say, I took 3 months to get mental help, or
Mm-hmm.
rehab physically, or whatever the case may be. They just see this person doing. And because we are human beings, nature's a being, we don't have, people don't see, even in music, there's rest points, right?
That's right.
So people don't see that. So I want you to touch, if you could, Ali, on the importance of the rest note.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. You play the pause in music. You play the pause. It's part and parcel of the overall piece, right? And it's that way in life. And I'm a huge believer in, you don't have to be fabulous every day, right? Like, every day you can't be on, because nobody can be all that every day. You've got to take time for yourself to recharge your batteries, time for recreation, because the root word of recreation is to recreate. And so you recreate by recharging and by filling your soul with energy and finding whatever it is that allows you to become whole again. Because as we spend time doing things, we expend our energy, we expend our love, we expend whatever mental capital or capacity we have. And it's important that we allow ourselves enough time and enough self-care and self-pampering that we can be filled up. Otherwise we get drained and burnt out. Like, everybody needs to spend a little time in nature every now and then. And I read a recent study that said women need one hug a day to be fully emotionally recharged. They need one, not just like a quick oh haha, but like a 30-second hug once a day to fully recharge emotional capacity. And it doesn't take long to recharge. Maybe you want to sit and read a book for an hour, or maybe you want to spend a whole day, watching old movies, or whatever it is for you. Maybe you want to go for a 5-mile run if you're in shape to do that. Whatever it is that restores and re-energizes you is vital, not only between big life changes, in which case you take a long time, and also, well, I'll get to that, but also just on a daily or weekly basis, right? So like I've had just a very busy schedule recently, and it's just been go, 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 go. And then yesterday I was like, you know what? I'm done. I opened my computer and I was like, yeah, no, I can't write today. I just got it. I had to take a break. So I ran some errands. I went for a walk, and it was restorative. And I woke up this morning feeling more recharged. When it's between two major life points, like you said, you mentioned taking a larger break of time. That time is not only to recharge and recuperate and restore your physical, emotional, and mental well-being, but it's also so that you can listen and get guidance, like your inner voice or your gut or whatever it is that you are tapping into to figure out what the next step is. It's not like, when my job ended, and I did also actually I started my own consulting business, and literally was 2 months in, and it was actually going well when boom, the pandemic hit, right? Like I started in January, March, the pandemic hit, and it was like, okay, well. But, so when I left the job, I took some time and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start this consulting business. I knew that I was going to do that. But after that, I was like, I didn't have a plan. What am I going to do? So, it's also important to get calm and find whatever your inner voice is telling you is the next step. Because otherwise we end up doing what other people want us to do. We follow career paths or take up activities because our parents wanted us to do it, or our friends are pressuring us into do it, or whatever. But is that what we really want? I mean, what is it that stirs us? What is it that feels like the right thing for us? And if we listen and really pay attention, we'll get there. Because we already have everything we need within us to achieve our dreams. It's just that we're not paying enough attention to listen and hear what our dreams are.
That's good. I was just thinking about a quote one of my mentors told me when I was in my early 20s. He said, until you get a vision for yourself, you're going to be in trouble. He says, when you get a vision for yourself, you got to have vision. No, he said, this is what he said. He said, you got to have vision for yourself. Because until you do, you have to follow someone else's vision.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, wait a second now. And, I was brought up in a certain kind of way, but I think we have to take time for that new vision, that new planning. And I think it's critical also to plan. Like you said, you were planning to go into being a consultant, but then that plan got shot down because of the pandemic. But then you started planning something new, right? So part of that being re-energized and just listening to what's next is making a plan for what's next. Because sometimes I see people out here and they want to start a podcast, they want to become an author, they want to do this, they want to do that, but they don't have no plan to back it up. And I know, like a lot of people have, well, I don't want to box myself in. Well, a plan's not really a box. It's like your skeletal structure to your body. It gives you something to follow. It's bent. And, if you need to, you can change. Now, we can't do this physically, but if you need to change your structure, you can get a new structure for your plan. Like if you're going to be an author, you want to be a content creator instead, fine, do that. But make sure you have a plan. And if that's not working for you, then change your plan. But like you did, I think it's very critical.
There's still time to change the road you're on.
Yep. And let me say this too, so people don't get stuck. Even if me and Allie did the same exact thing, it wouldn't come out the same exact way because our backgrounds are different, our thought processes are different, and the way we get to point B is different. So we've got to remember that when we're dealing with stuff, so we don't get stuck. So you went through this process of grieving and recuperating, listening to yourself and replanning and refocusing. And you wrote your first book, your second book.
I'm still working on my second book. I've only got one book out. The updated version came out in November, this past November. I had originally put it out, and I'll be honest, you make it sound like it was really all of this plan, but that whole becoming an author thing, it was more like, well, I've got this, this book, and shared it with my kids, and they shared it with their friends, and had a few friends look at it, and they're like, oh, you should publish. And I'm like, okay, I'll publish. So I published it, but then that's when things changed for me, Chris, because I started getting feedback, not from friends or from my kids, but from strangers, people I didn't know, emailing me, talking to me about how this book spoke to them, or how a particular passage or quote spoke to them, or how they'd always heard a quote and never really internalized its true meaning. Because the way my book is set up, there's a little quote, and then I talk about it for a couple pages. And so getting that feedback, I was like, wow, this book is having positive impact. And I started looking at the book, and I was like, this is fine, but it's not, I'm not proud of it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began a several months long process of revising it, expanding it a little bit, adding some bonus materials, setting up an introduction to kind of set it up. I got a new cover that was a little more in line, had it professionally edited by an amazing woman who focuses on the sort of self-help motivation genre, and then re-released it just in November. And it's been great. I mean, it's doing really well, because I finally did do that plan, right? I finally, with intent, addressed that book. So it wasn't like I set out to be an author. I didn't go, okay, now here's my plan to be an author. It was more like, oh crap, I'm an author and I have a book. I need to make it better. Which is different from where I am now, because I'm currently working on two different books. But I've decided, I've made an active decision now. Okay, I would like to continue doing this. I would like to continue writing books and speaking, and I'm not going to give up the life coaching, though I've cut way back on. I'm very selective now, but I appreciate what you're saying about you've got to have a plan, but a lot of times you get to where you're going to be and you don't have a plan. You didn't have a plan for getting there. So, and I think that's okay. That's okay. But once you get there, absolutely, you have to set up, your POAM, your objectives and milestones, your actionable milestones. You have to have SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable, all that stuff. And you have to really reward yourself for each positive step you take, because that will help you to get to the next step. And you have to consciously choose to take that step. There's the quote that a journey of 1,000 miles, Lao Tzu, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I have disagreed with that, because I think the journey begins with your making the decision to take that step. Because it's 1,000-mile journey, single step. Yep. Okay, that's great. The gym is there. I drive past it every day. You have to make the decision to take that step. And then you have to choose to take the second step and the third, and keep moving forward. And when you do that, it is all too easy to be like, oh, I still have so far to go. And you need to stop. We talked about having a moment to recharge, taking a down day, taking a day for ourselves. You need to turn around and go, wow, I've already done a lot of steps. Yep. Because we are just our own worst, critics. We're just so hard on ourselves as a species. Right. And I've mentioned this before, but our brains are hardwired from caveman survival days to remember negative stimuli, because it was a survival technique. You just watched your cousin there get mauled and eaten by some lion or something, and you're like, oh, I don't need to be doing that. The flip side of it, which is great, but the flip side of that is, you forget to reward yourself and acknowledge your accomplishments. And, there's been studies shown that if you hear multiple positive reward stimuli, you hear encouraging comments, that for every 10 encouraging comments you hear, if you hear one negative comment, it's the negative comment you remember. So, it's very important as we journey through life, whether you intend to end up where you're, me, I stumbled in, but then when you know what you want to do, and that's a journey of its own, right? Like figuring out what it is you want to do as opposed to what everyone else wants, for you to do. Then you figure out how that looks. So if somebody says, yeah, they want to be an author and a podcaster and a this and a that, do they really want to do that? Or is it just that, oh, that's a trendy thing, so yeah, let me do that. Because if they really want to do it, like if someone really wants to achieve a goal, they'll figure it out and they will want to do the work that goes into it. And if anyone is out there being like, yeah, I want to do whatever, and they're not willing to do the work that it takes to get there, my advice would be to reevaluate. Is it really what you want to do if you don't want to spend your time trying to prepare to do it?
Yeah,
because
I agree with you.
it's like George Burns, right? Like, why do you keep telling jokes? If they're going to pay me to do it, I'll do it because I'm going to do it anyway because I love it, right? So
I was thinking of Gary Vaynerchuk though. I think sometimes, like especially when you're younger, you try stuff, right? And it's okay if you think you want to be a podcaster, an author, you try and
yeah,
don't do as well as you planned on doing. No one
absolutely.
sets out, but you found out that didn't work for you that way. And like, I'm thinking about your background and how you probably had meetings you had to attend and you even spoke at probably and had to give people advice on topics in the environmental sense. And then even running for office, you probably had to give speeches and stuff. This all prepared you for documenting the stuff, prepared you to be an author. And I was thinking about even how you became an author. It's very similar to this guy who wrote, I want to say it was called The Gift, right? And he wrote this book called The Gift, and he gave it to his kids, and the kids loved it so much. They said, Dad, why don't you publish this?
Mm-hmm.
And he published it, and it went crazy. Everyone loved the book.
Yeah.
And so yours is a similar story. He didn't plan on publishing, neither did you. And based upon demand, people wanted it. I was thinking about Ed Millett. He says this. Ed's a motivational speaker and stuff. He said, talking about his dad said, he asked his dad stopped drinking. He said, Dad, you think you'll make it next year? He says, I don't know, son, but give me one more day. And that became a theme in Ed's mind. Give me one more day. Give me one more day. If you don't think you can make a year of podcasting, a year of being an author, but you want to try, just give yourself one more day. That whole mindset of just one more day. I just got to do this one more time.
One day at a time.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think that's good perspective to have. So tell me, tell the people where they can find you and what areas do you have the best impact in? Because I know you said you're still coaching a little bit, but you only on a limited basis. So what's your demographic and who are you looking to impact most?
The demographic that has responded, I didn't go about trying to target an audience, but I discovered what my target audience was through the feedback and whatnot, are really people going through what I've called life's inflection points. They're dealing with some sort of significant turbulence, change, or trauma in their lives. And that tends to be people who are in the 18 to 25-year-old category. They're leaving home for the first time, or they're going to college, or they're leaving college, or they're starting new jobs, they're starting new relationships. That's a demographic that has really seemed to respond and been positively influenced by my messaging, as well as people in the 35 to 55-year-old, especially women in the 35 to 55-year-old bracket who's they're the ones that the kids are leaving, right? The kids are heading out. A lot of them are going through divorce or loss, or they're finding themselves trying to figure out new careers. And it's a very turbulent, traumatic change point for them. Having said that, it really speaks to pretty much anyone who's going through a hard time and looking for a way to deal with life's challenges with a little more grace, with a little more self-love, and and is interested in pursuing a journey to find their authentic selves and live what I call a successful life. And by success, I mean doing what you want, where you want, and who you want to do it with, right? Like who you want along for the ride. And that to me is, so that's my demographic. And having said all that, you can reach me through my website, which is allydalsimer.com or allydalsimer.us. And you can contact me. I would encourage folks, if they're interested, to sign up for my free newsletter. I provide 5 minutes of fabulosity, tips and tricks for dealing with all kinds of issues. We talk about all kinds of issues in my newsletter. And you can, reach out to me through that for speaking engagements and whatnot. And, if you're interested in life coaching, like I said, I'm pretty selective these days. I just don't have the time for it. And, one thing about life coaching is if someone's going to invest their time, their money, their effort into trying to improve their life, I need to be in a position that I can offer all of me back for them. So I do it a little bit now, but not too much. But I'm doing more public speaking, and I'm loving that. And I'm also, like I said, writing 2 books. I'm kind of excited. They're in 2 completely different genres. Writing a middle grade adventure story and kind of a YA romance. So we'll see how those goes. The second one's kind of in the early stages. We'll see.
Gotcha. And do you have a very, like, your own favorite quote? Like, you quoted some stuff during the show, but is it?
I have several. The big ones for me, the one that I personally take to heart nearly every day was by Jackie Kennedy Onassis. And she said, if you mess up your children, nothing else you do matters. And that for me is my mantra for a living. Having said that, the ones that I espouse the most, especially to my kids, are from Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And the other is, the harder you work, the luckier you'll get. And those are the ones that I tell them, because they're at the start of their lives, and I believe them both. Just do it, and it'll happen.
I'll throw one in there just for the sake. I've said this one before, but I think it bears repeating. Opportunity knocks on your front door, but usually it's dressed in overalls and looks like work.
There you go. Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for being on, Allie.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's been a great fun conversation, and I've enjoyed it. I hope that people really will reach out to me. I love to interact with folks, and please do sign up for my newsletter.
Listen, everybody, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that notification bell. If you're on the podcast realm, please leave us a review of our podcast. It'd do us a great favor. Thank you so much. Have a great day.